Welcome, lovelies. Welcome to another episode of the Invernadero Mind podcast. I've been having a fantastic week. I was doing some interviews for season 2, which I'm really excited about. This podcast has allowed me to meet new people and learn from regular people who found ways, regardless of their challenges, to deal with problems such as imposter syndrome or failure in general. So I'm very, very excited. My guest today is living her dream life. She graduated from the University of Houston with the Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering. She also has a Master's in Industrial Engineering. She is currently working at NASA full-time as a thermal engineer. She works on super cool projects including the Volatile Investigating Polar Exploration Rover, in other words, Viper, which is a rover going to the moon in 2023. She's also working on the Artemis Program doing thermal analysis and subsystem management for Orion. Through her platforms, she hopes to inspire and guide other women who are interested in following a career in STEM or wish to connect with other women in science. We discuss representation, discrimination, and the challenges she encountered as a young woman in this field. Guys, she is also a Libra. You will learn in this interview that her and I share the same birthday. So I added that to my already biased opinion about her. Let's welcome Zaida Hernandez. Hello, Zaida. How are you? Thank you so much for agreeing to do the interview.
Hi, Gabriela. I'm doing really good. Thanks. Very nice to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
No, thank you. I know you guys are busy, and especially, in December. So thank you so much for, putting some time aside to do this. So, let's start with you. Let's start with your story. You're an engineer at NASA. How did that happen? Let's start from the beginning. Where did you go to school?
So I'm a mechanical engineer, and I went to school at the University of Houston. And the way that I got to NASA is probably the way that a lot of people get in, through internships. Luckily for me, I started a little bit before maybe a lot of other people. A lot of people come in through college internships, and I was fortunate because I live in Houston, Texas. And when I was in high school, they had an internship program that was specific for local Houston students. So I applied to that. I was a senior, and I got selected for the program. So I had a chance to intern at NASA at Johnson Space Center in Houston when I was a high school senior. And then I continued to apply for other internships. And then ultimately that led to a full-time offer when I was closer to graduation.
Super cool. I mean, you were still in high school, right? You were doing these interviews and still in high school. What was that like? Did your classmates ever ask you, your friends, like, hey, what is it like, to be at NASA intern, doing this internship?
Yeah, so I'm kind of a shy person and more reserved. So I was doing that. I didn't really tell a lot of people. So my close friends knew, and that's about it. Not a lot of people knew that I was having the internship at NASA. My family knew. And then a couple of people started to find out, but we have the visitor center. It's called Space Center Houston. So a lot of people assumed that I was working there, helping with the kids. They have kids activities and things like that. I was at the Space Center, supporting the people that work at the Space Center, the engineering and the other departments that they have.
Super cool. Now, I mean, when you got your first internship, what were your tasks?
Yeah, so as a high school student, it really wasn't anything technical. They assigned me to the Office of Education. So really in that position, I was working with internship coordinators. So that was probably very good for me because they want to select the college interns. So it was kind of I was getting a sneak peek to what is a good resume, or what are the positions for college interns. So that's kind of what I was doing. I was helping select the college interns. I was also helping with conferences for educators. So it was non-technical. It wasn't till I got my second internship when I was a freshman in college. That one became a little bit harder. That was more challenging. So that one was in the engineering department. And there I was working with the spacesuits team. So I was learning how to do like computer-aided design and graphics and things like that. Things that I had learned in high school a bit, but now this time I was applying it to something in the real world. So that was pretty cool.
Awesome. Were you ever in a position where somebody asked you to do something and you're like, oh my God, I don't know what to do and I don't know how to ask for help?
Yes, all the time. So it was really nice because people have been in that position. So a lot of people at NASA have come in as interns. So understand like, oh, well, this is an intern. Like they're still a student. They're still learning. They might not know, especially like, yeah, when I was a high school student and like my first couple of years in college, I only had fundamental knowledge of things. I hadn't taken any of the real engineering courses, basic knowledge in like computer graphics and things like that. So everybody was very helpful of showing me how to do it and like doing more like what they called shadowing. Like, well, come see how I do it, and you can just like sit by my side and I can show you how to do it. If you have any questions, ask me. So that was really nice for me because it made it easier to feel comfortable to be able to ask questions.
Now, would you say that these internships that you were taking kind of helped you decide or go into the major that you chose while at college?
Yeah, so that's a really good point because when I was in middle school and high school, and you asked me what I wanted to do when I like grew up and what I wanted to do as a career, I would have told you architecture. So I was into like design, and then my parents had gotten me like those computer games where you can build houses. I like Legos and like the what were they called? The cabins where you could build like logs. So like growing up, it was always like, okay, I'm going to be an architect. Whenever I started getting into my senior year in high school, I started taking those graphics classes, and they had like engineering graphics and architectural graphics. And that's where I learned a little bit more about like the engineering side of things. So then I was like, okay, maybe I'll be an architectural engineer. And like at that same time, one of my teachers approached me because I wanted to be in the co-op program. So that's the one where the seniors, they get to go out and do like a job part-time and then like finish up like their last 2 or 3 classes in high school. And then she told me there was this opportunity at NASA and I should apply. So I did, but at that time I was still like, okay, I'll probably be like architectural engineering. But when I got to NASA and then I started like talking to some of the people that were doing engineering there and like finding out about the work that NASA was doing in engineering and like, oh, I could apply the stuff in design that I want to do and like art and stuff like that.
Yeah.
In engineering of like spaceships and like other things that like is very like, wow.
Scary.
That was like,
in a good way.
yeah, I was like, okay, I hadn't even like thought of that. Like I guess I hadn't really thought of women in that field, right? Because movies of NASA, and it's usually like guys, like older guys at NASA. So even then, it wasn't until I was there that I thought like, hey, like this is something probably that I could do. So yeah, that changed my mind. The internship is really my mind. Like I want to do mechanical engineering now.
That's so cool because, people encourage you to take internships, but sometimes, I guess, depending on your field, they can either help you or just, I guess, not waste your time, but sometimes they're not as, helpful as you would expect them to be. But, in your case, I mean, that's super cool. I mean, to be doing all those things while you're still, figuring out what you want to do. So what is the specific major that you chose? Was it engineering in college?
Yeah, so it was mechanical engineering.
Okay.
The one that's kind of related, I guess, is like aerospace engineering to the work at the University of Houston. They didn't offer that. So mechanical engineering was more like a broader engineering that I could go into.
So to get admitted, did you face any difficulties? Did you have to pass any sort of exam? What was that like?
I guess it's been a while ago that I don't remember that much, but I don't remember it being like a really big issue to get into it. There was like the regular math and science courses, but I don't remember that there was like any type of testing that you had to take to be admitted.
Mm-hmm. Now, as far as your tuition, how easy was it for you to, I mean, I don't know if you did, but were you able, did you see a lot of advertising for loans or scholarships that you could get access to, or any grants? Was it easy, or you pretty much never really saw any of those?
It was super easy and there was so much information available. Like, I think there was too much information available that I don't even know a lot of the things that I could have applied for. So there's like the university scholarships and loans and grants and things like that. And then I also looked for a lot of opportunities outside of my university. So I applied for a lot of things. So in engineering, there's a lot of different organizations. For example, there's Society of Hispanic Engineers, a Society of Hispanic Engineers, Society of Women Engineers, and then you have all of the core American IEEE, I forget what the acronyms are, but specific to electrical engineering, specific to mechanical engineering. So I applied to a lot of those and got scholarships through those organizations. They also have like big programs like the Hispanic Scholarship Fund, and I got scholarships through that. So I would say there's a lot of opportunities, especially for minorities, for Hispanics, for women. So yeah, if you look, you're going to find something.
Mm-hmm. So would you say that a regular like Google search led you to these resources, or you kind of had to ask around and go out of your way to find all of this?
Yeah, I would say like a quick Google search, and even making it broad, women scholarships or engineering scholarships, duration scholarships, like all of the things that you could think of, that categories that you fit in. Very simple to just do those searches. The other way was, to ask around. So a lot of people are in your same position. So you can ask, like, hey, what scholarships did you get, and things like that. But yeah, I didn't find it difficult at all to do that.
Awesome. Now, while in college, did you take any other internship? I mean, did you do any other internships at NASA, or you pretty much, studying and kind of, pretty much thinking about your graduation and kind of taking it, step by step?
No. So I did a lot of internships whenever I was in college. I interned with NASA through undergrad, and then I went straight into getting a master's. So I did my master's in industrial engineering. So in total, I think it was like 7 internships.
Oh, wow. So back to back.
Well, so kind of. So with that program, I would go to school, say like the spring, and then I would co-op in the fall, and then maybe I would do like a full year and then go to NASA in the summer and things like that. So all in all, it's a little bit longer to graduate, but super rewarding. Like, I 100% recommend. I'm not sure if it's for other majors, but for engineering, it's like game changing. Like, it is very recommended that you do an internship, kind of to test out the waters. Do you like that company? Do you want to go to oil and gas? Do you want to go into aerospace? Do you want to go into energy or anything like that? So 100% recommend internships. Like, for me, it was like life-changing because, like, I don't know how I would be working at NASA had it not been for the experience that I gained through those internships.
Awesome. So when you graduated, how did you decide, okay, I'm going to actually apply for a job at NASA, or was it offered to you?
So that's one of the great things about those types of internships, that it's not like 100% certain that you will get a job, but if you meet the requirements, you have like the GPA that they ask for, and it's basically like a contract. So you have to, at a minimum, come back to NASA for 3 semesters. So if you meet those requirements and then you get like the good reviews because you get like your semester end reviews with your mentors. So if all of those things are good, there's a pretty high chance that they'll give you a job offer through some of these internship programs. So there's different ones. There's like time internship programs, and then there's like the Pathways internship program, and that's the one that I did. And that's the one where you have to go for a minimum of 3 semesters. And they're very good at offering jobs whenever you're a senior. So before I graduated, I already had an offer.
Awesome. That's super cool.
Yeah.
Now, other than those, requirements, did you have to go through an interview? Did you have to go through some type of, movie type of, interview, or, what was that like? Or they just simply said, hey, this is the job. Do you want it?
No. So every time that you intern, you're interviewing. So every time I would go to a new department, I would interview with the person to see if it was a good fit. As far as for the actual, like, here's the job offer. Yeah, I don't remember there being an interview. So at that point, you've already done your different rotations. They called them rotations. And you've already like talked to like the boss in that department and things like that. And they're kind of the ones doing the negotiation. So at that point, they know if you've done a good job, and then you also know if you've done a good job. So they're in talks with human resources. And I know for my case, they let me know ahead of time, like, hey, we're going to try to get you an offer. Like, we're working on that. And yeah, they did. So I was very thankful for that. Yeah.
That's super cool. Now, when you started working, you finally are inside, you're working there officially. Was it a smooth journey, or did you face any adversities?
Yeah, I think it's a very nice place to work. You're starting to see more diversity. I think some of the older generations, you can tell that it's very male dominated. It's a lot of just like the same race, and yeah, just male. And then now you're getting to see like other races and more females. So I would say it was a good transition, that I came in at a good time where I didn't feel like any type of discrimination or anything like that.
You're a thermal engineer. What does that mean exactly? Like, what kinds of things do you have to do, at work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in mechanical engineering, you go through different subjects that you can like specialize in. So for thermal engineering, you focus more on like the heat transfer side. So as a thermal engineer, we're the ones that are working on, it can be like a couple of different things. So there's like design, analysis, and testing. And then we focus on thermal management systems. So there's a couple of different like routes now to go into that. But the specific group that I work on is passive thermal control systems, and then thermal protection systems. So that's like 2 different categories. But thermal protection systems is like on re-entry, anything that comes back into Earth. It's like extremely hot. So we're working on those thermal protection systems that are able to withstand those extreme temperatures. And then on the other side, like the passive thermal control, it's things that don't require mechanical systems, which is interesting because I'm a mechanical engineer, but for passive thermal, it's systems that don't have any mechanical parts. So those radiators and solar panels and things like that. So one of my projects is actually working on the thermal management system for a Viper rover. And the Viper rover is the one that's going to be going to the moon here in a couple of years. So that's a pretty cool project.
Oh my goodness. That's super exciting. I mean, it's one of those things that it's kind of surreal, I guess, for somebody who is outside, I'm just looking from the outside spectrum, and to see somebody do this, and you're a woman, you're Latina. I mean, it's just super cool to hear that. So what kind of skills would you say that you need to have your job?
Yeah, so a lot of the things that I do is on the job training. So like the fundamental things that you would need is everybody that I work with has a mechanical engineering degree or an aerospace engineering degree. So at a minimum that most people that I work with also have a master's, but that's not a requirement. And then some of like the softer skills is like your communication skills, because we do a lot of presentations. So we work with a lot of the different NASA centers. We're based in Houston, Texas, Johnson Space Center. But we do a lot of work with Ames Research Center in California. We do some work with Kennedy Space Center in Florida. So there's a lot of communication skills. There's also maybe like opportunities for leadership to take on different positions, different roles. So I think at a minimum, like some of those things.
So I can only assume that you deal also, at work, you deal with failure because, not everything that you test, not everything that you do comes out right. How do you deal with that?
Yes, that is a good question. So we do think about that a lot in engineering. So what we try to do is we call them redundant systems. So a lot of the things that we work on, we think about if there's a failure here, like what happens, like what's the backup system in case like this other thing goes wrong. We don't want like a catastrophic failure. We want something that, okay, this failed, but we have this backup system, so it's still going to work. But of course, sometimes some things still fail. So how do we deal with that? We try to at least, if there is going to be a failure, think about what is the consequence of that failure and like what's the risk mitigation strategy. How can we, if once it's happened, how do we fix it so that it doesn't happen again? Because like, true, nothing is perfect. So as much as like you're thinking of all the things that could happen, like something is bound right to happen at some point. Like it might not be in the next 5 years or maybe 1 year if I'm being a little bit more short term. But I think as an engineer, that's one of the things that, we're thinking about, especially at NASA. That's one of like their main core things of safety. So that's something that's always in the back of everybody's mind. There's a special safety team. So if you're not even thinking about it, safety team comes in. Have you thought about like these things that can go wrong? So then you can start thinking again about the problem.
Oh, wow. So much work. I mean, it has to be fun to be, yes, you're dealing with failure, but at the same time, you're with a team trying to figure out what to do, the alternative. So that has to be super exciting as well. I saw a picture of you wearing a spacesuit. I don't know when exactly you took that picture, but I thought that was super cool. And I was like, these people get to do so many cool things at work, and I'm sitting here, when I was when I was researching, I'm like, it sounds and it looks super interesting. And, to hear you talk about the things that you do, like I said, for people that are trying to figure out what they're going to study, what they're going to do, you hear a little girl say, hey, I want to go to space. And they might think it's just like wishful thinking, right? It's something that doesn't happen. But then you're here sitting, telling us all those things that you're doing for something that is going to go to the moon eventually. It's like, it's super cool.
Thank you.
No, thank you. So we were talking about representation. Your parents must be very proud of you. I bet they show you off to their neighbors and friends because that's what Latino parents do, right?
Yes.
Do they ever ask you, hey, did you, do they ever get curious? Because I bet you didn't even know you were going to end up working, at NASA at 15. How was it, how do they, I guess, cope with it in a good way?
I think like what you're saying, right? So I think Latino families are very proud and they like to talk and share about everybody's dreams and goals whenever they come true and the accomplishments of the children and things like that. So I think they're not I wouldn't say they're show offy or anything like that, but people ask them because at this point I've been working at NASA for a couple of years. So whenever they'll see something on TV, they're like, oh, is she working on that? Or so we have now I'm Salvadorian. My parents were both born in El Salvador, and we have a Salvadorian astronaut. So Frank Rubio. So that was a really big thing in our family and our friends whenever he was selected as an astronaut. And they were like, has she met him yet? Has she met the Salvadorian astronaut? So I did get to meet him, so that was like super cool. And like my mom was there whenever I met him. She was actually the one who like noticed him and was like, I think that's a Salvadorian astronaut. And then like we approached him to like say hi. But yeah, I think they enjoy it. Like my parents have always been, well, they've been in Houston for a very long time. Obviously from El Salvador, but they've been living in Houston for a long time. And they've been hearing about NASA and all of that. So they've loved it, and I think they're very happy.
That's so cool. Now, talking a little bit about your work environment, we talked about how it's, you said that you have seen changes, especially about the male dominated industry, right? Have you ever felt, not specifically at NASA, but just in general, have you ever felt like you had to prove yourself or explain yourself more than your male colleagues have to when making a serious decision?
Yes. So I have seen changes, but unfortunately, I think that's something that's still there, especially for like the older generations, and they're not used to seeing a lot of like younger people or like younger women. So I do feel that I get like what's called like the mansplaining sometimes. And I don't think it's coming from a bad place, honestly. I think it's they're just not used to it, and maybe that's just what they resort to. For example, I've gotten also like, oh, like you remind me of my daughter, but I can't really talk to her because she doesn't enjoy like talking about these things. So let me spend a lot of time and like talk to you and like re-explain things I already know. Or other times, yeah, it's partly I think because I'm a woman, but also because I think people think I'm younger than I am. So it's like a combination of those two things of you're a girl and you're young. Let me like double explain things to you. Like I said, like I don't think it's they don't mean it in a bad way, but yeah, that does happen a lot to me.
Oh my goodness. Now, how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
So I just turned 29.
Okay, so we're about the same age because I turned 29 in October.
Oh, me too.
You do look younger. No way. What day?
Fifth.
No way.
Really? Is that your birthday?
Yeah. We're both
Wow.
Libras.
Yes.
Oh
Wow.
my God. What a coincidence. Yes, my birthday is on the 5th. And,
Happy belated
it's,
birthday.
oh my God, that's super cool. What a coincidence. But you do look younger. And I feel like that's a good way, that's a good thing to, I guess, to have. I don't know how to
Yeah. Have
even
you
explain
experienced
it.
that too? Because you look young.
I heard that a lot. Some people say, "Hey, you look
Yeah.
like you're 22." Or my sister, they compare me to her, and they're like, "She looks young, older." Because I'm also tiny. I'm short, so and she's taller, so they
Okay.
assume I'm the younger. But
Okay. I think we're related because I'm short, I'm petite, and then they think I'm younger. Like for all those reasons.
really, it happens
Yeah.
all the time. It's a good thing, honestly, for me. I guess in my field, it's a good thing. But I guess if you're working at NASA and you're just dealing with all these technicalities, you're talking science with older generations,
Yes.
I can definitely see people trying to over-explain or mansplain, I guess, things,
Yeah.
and unrequested advice, like I like to call it.
Yeah, and
um,
I think I've learned tricks along the way. Like now, I think in the beginning it was a little bit worse because if anything, it made me even more like intimidated whenever I would get the, oh, I thought you were an intern, like I didn't know. And like before, you've already explained a lot of things, and I mean, no, I'm part of this team. So now I make it more known of, hey, like I'm part of this team, or hey, I'm actually the lead on this part of the team. And I think that helps clear it up sometimes.
That's cool. Yeah, definitely. Sometimes you have to. Sometimes you just gotta
Yeah.
push, take it stand. Now, how about other microaggressions? You're also Hispanic. Do you ever get comments about that?
Luckily, I haven't. So in the group that I work in, there's a couple of other Hispanic people. So that's been pretty nice because I think even there isn't like a ton of diversity, but luckily, like in the group that I work with, it's a very good balance. So I haven't felt anything like that due to my nationality.
That's awesome. That's super cool. I mean, unfortunately, it happens to other people in different fields, but it's also
Yeah.
good that, it doesn't happen to you. That's what everybody wants for
Yeah.
every woman out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, not at work. I would say maybe like in college, there's sometimes where you experience like a little bit of like discrimination.
Yeah. Can you give us an
Yeah,
example of what somebody said?
yeah. So maybe I don't think I'm super emotional, but I am sometimes. But just so I'm Salvadorian, and there's a pretty large community, I would say, of Salvadorian people in Houston. But I remember like one specific example that kind of hurt my feelings because I had like a study group or something like this. And like I would say they were my friends, but there was like one specific person that I don't know for what reason was like poking fun of like my nationality of, like Salvadorians don't get along with like my nationality and something like that. Like it's known for years. And I was like, well, I don't know like why you're saying that. Like we get along just fine. But yeah, just like little bit of things like that.
That's interesting. Something that happened to me once, because I went to college in Miami and I'm Peruvian, born and raised. So I feel like sometimes I received microaggressions, I would say, or experienced microaggressions from other Latino, members, like other, Latino or Hispanic people, and it's so strange because sometimes it's not just, whites versus minorities. Sometimes it's even,
Yeah,
between us, which is
yeah,
something that is not talked about enough.
yeah. And unfortunately, yeah, like this person that was like having these comments and like talking about like the bad things of El Salvador was like another Latino person, which I
Wow.
completely, yeah, like a lot of times I think people say things and don't really think about it before they say them, like that it can be considered hurtful or like just rude. But yeah, unfortunately, I have seen that like in our own community sometimes.
Stereotypes are very dangerous because you would be surprised even now in 2020 young people you would hear them say things that or jokes that previous generations would make, and it no longer makes sense, like like
Yeah,
stereotypes in general, like they to me they just don't make sense. You can't just
yeah,
generalize and put everybody into one box just because somebody did something
exactly.
and they're from this country. Why put everybody in the same category? Now, talking about you in general, we talked about failure at work, but just in general, have you or can you give us an example of a time you faced a roadblock and how do you overcome these things?
Yeah, and that, like I was saying about failure, like things can be going very smoothly, and all of a sudden there's like a roadblock or something can happen. And I think it's good to be prepared. Unfortunately, it's a failure, so a lot of times you're not prepared. It's unexpected. But yeah, I did experience quite a bit of failure when I was an undergrad. So I had a pretty rough time when I was starting out in college, like the transition of high school and college, because it's very different, right? Like high school is very structured. You're there like from like 7 a.m. to whatever in the afternoon. And then now in college, you're kind of like managing your own schedule. I was also doing an internship. So I was like driving to school in the morning and
Yeah.
then across town to NASA. And then I like to be really involved in student organizations. So I think I was overly involved that I would drive back to school. So it was like school, work, school. And then in between that, I needed to find time to like do homework and assignments and things. So yeah, so I was doing that for a while, like a semester or two. And then things weren't going so great for me because I think I was trying to do too much. So then I didn't do so great. I ended up like dropping one of my classes. And then, as you know, for scholarships, that's not a really great thing because you have requirements that you need to meet in order to be eligible for the scholarships. So, for example, the scholarships I was on required me to be a full-time student. So that's a minimum of 12 credit hours. Well, if I was dropping a class, I no longer met that requirement. Therefore, I was now on probation.
Wow.
So, yeah, so I was on probation for a while because then, like, you're dropping a class, you're not doing so well on the other courses, and now you have, like, this GPA that's, like, on the borderline. So, yeah, I would say that was one of the big failures I had to experience. And then not doing so well when I started, like, those hardcore engineering classes. But, yeah, just, like, pushing through and, like, seeing what didn't go well and how can I improve, starting to take more tutoring, focus more on what I needed to be focused on. Like, as much as I love the organizations, there was one person, he was like a really good friend. He was the president of the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers at my school. And he told me, like, hey, like, we love having you here, but you came here to get a degree, so do what you have to do. Like, the organization will be here later, so focus on what you have to focus on. And I think that was, like, one of the best advice that I got from a peer. So I kind of slowed down on, like, the activities for the organization, started doing more of the things that I needed to do, like go to tutoring or like office hours and things like that. And that's how I could overcome that. I started doing better. Of course, focusing more on the schoolwork aspect. But yeah,
Sacrifices, I guess, right? Sometimes you just gotta choose.
Yeah, you have to like find a good balance, and it takes time too, right? Because the transition is different, and there's different life circumstances. So yeah, like I was working, I found out that that wasn't the best thing for me to be going to school and working. Like, kudos to the people that do it. Like, it's very hard to do, and so I'm like amazed at the people who do it for years. That wasn't the route for me. So my route was go to school one semester, work another semester, and like that, even if it took me longer to graduate it. But that's the balance that I had to find.
Wow. You gotta do what you gotta do, I guess. That's super cool. Yeah. And you have to always look after your own health, because I feel like when you're stressed, when you overcommit and you're, overwhelmed with all these responsibilities, it kind of kills your vibe and your creativity and your willingness to do things, not necessarily because you don't like or enjoy doing them anymore, but because you're so overwhelmed that you're like, all right, stop, everybody stop. I just want to be alone. Leave me alone. I need some energy, I need to gain some perspective. So that's super cool. That was super smart, actually. I didn't do that in college, but I think I should have, because I chose to do two majors at the same time. And even though we're talking business, I went to business school, it was still a lot of work. And at the same time, I was, participating in different organizations as well. And at one point I was like, okay, I haven't even eaten and it's like 6 p.m. in the afternoon.
It's crazy, because I think as individuals, sometimes like there's things we're really passionate about. And for me, like going to those organizations, we would like go and do activities with the high school students or like elementary school students and do like things that were related to STEM and engineering. And I was really like excited about it. I want other people excited about it. But at the same time, like what you're saying, like you can't overcommit, and you have to think about yourself a little bit too, right? Like your health, because you're trying to do a lot of things, but at the end of the day, like if you're not in a good mental state or physical state, then you're not really helping anybody. You're just like overwhelming yourself.
Yeah. So at work, I guess the people that you work with constantly, they kind of become your tribe, your friends, your circle. How many other women, are working there with you, or Hispanic, members?
So in my immediate group, maybe we're 15 or 16 or something like that. So there's not that many of us. There is one more female in my group, and that's it.
No way.
And
So it's just you two.
yeah, and then the guys. But like I was saying, there's two other Hispanic guys, and then there's like a white guy married to a Hispanic woman, so he knows Spanish too. So that's kind of nice because sometimes like he'll be like talking Spanish or like
Yeah.
the white him and he'll talk in Spanish because I think he's like proud of it. So that's cute. But yeah, like immediately there's not a lot of women, but there are in other organizations. So like that's the core group that I work with, but we do a lot of like collaboration work with other organizations. So in some of the other organizations there are more females, not a lot of Hispanic women really, but a lot of other women of different races.
Interesting. That's so cool. I think we need more. We definitely need more representation. And there are so many women out there, Latinas, that are so smart. And,
Yes.
I'm interviewing a lot of girls that are in STEM programs and just talking to them. It's like, wow. I mean, just you have lots to offer. How do you feel about being part of, the Latinas in STEM community? You must be very proud of this because in a way you're representing something bigger and you could be the inspiration that a young girl needs.
Thank you. So I do feel very proud of it, and it's something that I am very passionate about. So whenever I can, like I try to help out, like in things like that, where it's like, oh, it's going to be like girls and introduce a girl to engineering and things like that. Because yeah, growing up, I don't think there was like that much representation, and even as a college student, there just wasn't a lot of women. Like now, I'll go back for activities like at the university and I'll see like slightly a bit more, like the percentage has increased, but it's not equal, like it's not there yet.
Now, what would you say is like a factor, like why are we not seeing more? Because there are resources, there are programs helping, minorities to go after this field, this careers. Why, I mean, do you have any idea why girls are not going for, the bigger, I guess, piece of the cake, I guess? Because one time I asked this, little girl in my neighborhood what she wanted to be. She was my neighbor. And she told me all kinds of, careers except for science. And I said, what about a scientist? You don't want to be a scientist? She's like, oh,
Yeah.
it sounds boring. And that's a misconception that we also have to change, right? Because people tend to think that you are either have to be a genius, you have to be a nerd, right? Or, I guess be a lab in a, be in a lab all day. But I feel like that's a misconception itself. That's not really what being in STEM programs it means.
Yeah, I think you hit on a lot of what I think too. So I've heard a couple of different things. I think personally, I think it is maybe just because we haven't gotten there yet, and there's just like that stereotype of like it's boring and things like that. And then like maybe even like the marketing of it. I don't know if that's the right word, but like whenever I was watching these movies of like Apollo and NASA, I didn't see myself represented there because at that time there was no representation of females or Latinas like in the space industry. Like,
Yeah.
so for me, it was like I wouldn't see it on TV, so I couldn't put myself in that position. And I think it's easier for you to imagine yourself if you can see it, like if you can visualize it. So like a lot of little girls will probably say like, oh, I want to be like a doctor or like a nurse and things like that, because if they're like, or like a teacher, because they see these shows on TV and they portray like a beautiful person, like that's a nurse or a teacher, and they can see themselves like that's who I want to be. But now you're starting to see more movies maybe with, oh, a woman scientist, and like she's smart and she's beautiful and like she's capable of all of these things. But I think there hasn't been, like historically, that hasn't been the case that much. So I think like maybe that's part of the reason. And I know like a lot of the the companies for like toys have started like kind of trying to market more STEM things, and like at the same time making them like girly to like bring the interest, because even like at that young age, right, there's like the boy toys and the girl toys, or like the boy clothes and the girl toys. So like you go to the department, there's not like a lot of like space stuff or NASA stuff, because that's like a boy kind of thing, like space for boys. So
Yeah, I
starting
agree.
to see some of it more now, but I think like, yeah, just in the past in general, it's been very like divided. So I could see like from a child's perspective, like, well, like there's no like NASA stuff, like that's in the boy side, so it must be like a boy thing, so I can't be like a rocket scientist because that's for boys. So that's part of it. And then I've also heard from other girls that because like their parents know it's a male dominated field, sometimes their parents are not very supportive of them going into like STEM careers, like engineering, because they're just worried about like a girl with like a bunch of guys, and that they're gonna like mistreat her or like things like that.
If you think about it, even the movies, all the male, all the leading, characters, they're all male, they're all good looking, they're all tough, they know it all. And there haven't been that many movies that represent women in general. And I feel like if you asked me, the only movie that I can think of right now that that came out in the last 10 years, I guess it would be Interstellar for me. And I remember going to the movies to watch it because of
That was a good
Murphy,
one.
and I mean,
Yeah.
yes, there was Matthew McConaughey and all these actors, but Jessica Chastain and Anne Hathaway, I mean, they just took the, I
Yeah.
guess, for me, I mean, watching them and act, talk about all these things and discuss and make their points, it was pretty cool. I mean, especially, the character Murphy, it was like, wow, like this is the first time I'm seeing, a woman, talking about all these things and leading something. It was just super cool. And I'm like, all right, Hollywood is catching up on this. So that was.
Yeah. And right, like, and that's recent years, because that movie isn't that old, or
Mhm.
maybe like old, but yeah, like before that, there's like probably very limited number of movies where you see like women in those STEM roles.
So, is this the reason why you started sharing more resources on your Instagram, or is it just like it comes natural to you?
No, so it is kind of the reason. So before I was just like putting like personal pictures and things like that. But then occasionally like there was like something really cool happening at work. And then like sometimes my friends are asking me like, well, what exactly do you do again? Or like, what's like happening at NASA? Like I heard of this project, like, are you working on it? So I guess it was like a way of just like sharing that information to everybody at once. I was like, okay, like this is like something cool that I'm doing. I'm on like a work trip supporting this cool mission. So I would post it like that. And then like through Instagram, I started meeting like other girls that were like sharing their journeys. And I was like, hey, like that's actually a really cool idea. Like it's very inspiring. And I think it would have been very nice, like for me, whenever I was going through school, to like hear these resources that these girls are providing, and like having this like community of like women in STEM. So I like the idea of that. And then I was also getting like some messages from people that were just like curious, like, hey, can you tell me more about like NASA, or can you tell me more about like this thing happening at NASA? It was more specifically like things related to NASA. But yeah, so then I was like, okay, so people are interested in this, and I do have this platform. So like, why not take advantage of that and like share this information that people are interested in?
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yes, when I saw your Instagram, I was like, all right, there's so many things to learn. And I'm not even in the science field, but I was super engaged, definitely.
Oh, mm.
Especially one post I recently saw a post where you shared, that NASA has just announced a team of 18 astronauts that will
Oh
be
my
part of
gosh,
the
yes.
Artemis program. First of all, tell us what is, this Artemis program. I'm even afraid to pronounce it wrong.
Yeah, so Artemis is the name of it. And then I think Artemis is like in Spanish, I think is how they're pronouncing it. But yeah, so it's really cool. And the announcement came yesterday, but a little bit of background. So the Artemis program is the program that is going to take us back to the moon by 2024. So there's like a couple of things that need to happen before that takes place. So this is the Artemis program. They're marketing it as this is the program that will take us back to the moon by 2024, and this will be the first time that a woman steps foot on the moon. So before we know that men have gone to the moon, right? But never a woman. So this one, NASA made the pledge that they're going to have a woman as part of the mission. So it was, just announced that there's going to be, these are the 18 astronauts. And from these 18 astronauts, the first woman will come out, like the first woman will be going to the moon from this group. And then the Artemis program, so it's going to be multiple missions. So there's going to be Artemis 1, Artemis 2, Artemis 3, and beyond. So they're planning to do like a couple of missions right to the moon. And then like maybe before that, there's a couple of work that needs to be done. So like the rover that I was talking about before, this rover is supposed to go like a year before the astronauts, and it's drilling on the moon and finding water resources, so that in the future, like when the astronauts can go like to the places where like the rover pretty much has said, like, this is a good place to go. So that's what that's about. And then, yes, so of these 18 astronauts, 9 of them are female. So that's like amazing. That's half, of the team that they selected are women. And then like another amazing part is like the diversity of the group. So in that group, you have like white women, you have Black women, there's like an Iranian American woman. There's another astronaut who like has come out as a lesbian. So like before that, like you would have been like NASA, like this is a government, agency, and like they have like diversity, like it's amazing. So I was like super happy to hear.
I'm so excited.
Yeah,
so excited to hear that.
Super excited about the women. And then now, like to top it off too, there's like Latino representation, because 2 of the selected astronauts are of Latin descent. So there's Joe Acaba, he's Puerto Rican, and then we have Frank Rubio, and he's the Salvadorian astronaut. So
oh my goodness, double the win. Did you guys celebrate when you found all this news, or, was it something that you were already expecting? Like, because to me, to hear it and to read it, it was like, oh my gosh, like that's super cool, But how about you guys in your group, for example, at work, when you found these things out, did you guys celebrate and, open champagne and everything?
No, so unfortunately, no. And that's something that I think is a little bit sad. But I think a lot of times the people are so like focused on their work that they forget to like step back and take like a look at the big picture of like, hey, like we're the support team, like we're the engineering group that are helping build the capsule where the astronauts will go. But everyone's like so absorbed in the work that I think sometimes like they miss the big picture, and they're just like, oh, cool, we have new astronauts, keep working. And things like that.
Now I can only imagine like the older generations trying to understand. Not that I'm saying that they're all against it or anything. It's just that it has to be hard to kind of understand and see the change,
Yeah, I think it's probably like a big difference, and they're probably just like, wow, like this is so different. But yeah, I don't think they're like opposed to it. But yeah, it's really cool to see like where we started and like where we are now. And like I was talking about, like in my group, there's just like us 2 women. So like it's amazing to me that like at the astronaut level, that's kind of like the poster child, I would say, of NASA. Like those are the faces of NASA, the astronauts, that there's like that much diversity and like equality, I could say, of like the men and the women.
Mm-hmm. That's so inspiring. It kind of makes you want to work harder, and keep them safe, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, and really that's like one of the things that I really like about NASA, that like they take that seriously, like they really do. because I know there's criticism sometimes of like, well, why do the programs take so long, and like why is there like so much rework or things like that? But really, it's like because of what you're saying, because you're keeping the astronaut safety in mind, like you don't want things to go wrong. So even if it takes longer, but you feel safer for them, then we're going to take that route, even if it takes longer.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, switching the topic a little bit to you, what does a day in the life of an engineer at NASA look like? What do you do on a regular day?
So I think that varies depending on what project I work on. So I work a couple of different projects. I think the one I've been talking about most is like the Rover project. So that one, it depends also on the phase of the project. So right now we're working on like the design phase, right? And we're starting to get ready for testing. So a lot of what I do is we have like commercial off the shelf parts and like custom parts sometimes that we order. So I work on like a specific part of the thermal system. So I work with different companies. Well, and I also work with the different NASA centers because they have their areas of expertise. So I work with them and they're building some stuff for us and making sure that they have like the computer drawings that they need to build the parts. There's a lot of meetings with different like systems. So I work thermal, but thermal works with the mechanisms group and the structures group and the power group. So making sure there's a lot of communication between those groups and that all of their requirements are met for our system. And then some of the parts that I really like, but we're not there yet, is like whenever you do testing. So whenever you get to the testing phase, that's a different type of day, right? So you'll like go in and then you can have like very long tests that are 8-hour shifts. So that's what you'll do all day, and you'll be monitoring like the temperatures on your computer for 8 hours.
Wow.
So a day. And then after like the testing phase, then you go back now to the analysis phase. So now you have all of this data from your tests, and what do you do with it? So some of my other days consist of like staying behind my computer all day and like doing post-processing of the data that comes from the test and interpreting like reach the temperatures that we needed. Like plotting things and things like that.
It sounds like, so much work, but it sounds like you also love doing it. I mean, I can definitely see you happy to tell us all these things. And that happens when you're inspired and you love what you do. Now, what do you do on the side? Like, how do you relax? How do you spend time, kind of gaining perspective and, spending time with yourself?
Yeah. So I like to spend a lot of time with my family. So that relaxes me, like just spending like quality time and like talking to them about like what they're doing. And I think they also like to know what I'm doing. But like it's not like stressful. It's more like kind of like relaxing because it's like you take a step back and you don't go to the nitty gritty. Like if I'm explaining like the Rover project or like the space capsule project or something like that, it like reminds me of like, hey, like the work that I'm doing is interesting and like it's useful, like it's going to be used at some point. Like it might take sometimes like a couple of months or a couple of years, but like so there's like that aspect of like the family quality time. I'm also like more of an artsy kind of person, so relax. I like to like listen to music or like draw, or I play the piano. And
Oh, that's cool.
I'm mostly self-taught. I took like a semester of classes when I was in university, and I took a year of classes when I was in high school. And that's kind of all of like the formal training that I've had. But yeah, I like the arts side of things.
That's awesome. Super cool. I would love to see like your drawings, on a different Instagram account. I mean, you never know,
That's funny
So,
you're saying that because I was I've been thinking of doing like digital art because I do more like color pencil or like acrylic paintings and things like that. But I've been seeing like so much inspiration, from like accounts that do like digital art. So I've been like trying that, but like it's not at a level where I'm like comfortable sharing like anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I do enjoy seeing those types of accounts too.
Awesome. Me too. I follow a lot of accounts and I'm like, people are so creative. It's super cool. I mean, what you can do really. I have two more questions for you.
Okay.
Other than these projects, what's next for you? What do you see yourself doing in 5 years? Not that this is, a job interview or anything like that, but what would you like to do in the future?
Yeah, I think it's always good to think about those things. So another hat that I have is I do like subsystem management for a different project. Well, I'll tell you a little bit about it. So we have the thermal protection system, which is like that special materials that we use that are like very high temperature resistant. So we have what's called the launch abort vehicle and the service module. So I'm the subsystem manager for the thermal protection system on those two components. So the system is pretty cool because that's like, if you look at the rocket, you have like the capsule up top and then you have like a tower. So that tower is the launch abort system. And in case there is like an accident and the rocket has already gone, like it's on its way, and then you find that there's a fault, the launch abort system will like basically like pop off the capsule attached and like eject out and take the astronauts to safety like within seconds.
Awesome.
So like the project that I work on, and yeah, it's like a subsystem management role, but I work under a system manager. So I think like a future goal, like maybe in 5 years, I'd like to work up to like a system management position. And I also I like the work that has to do with like the program. So I do like a lot of analysis and testing, like at a I would say like at a lower level, but you also have the program office and they're the ones that see things like the systems engineering side, like how do all the parts come together? So I think that's something very interesting. Like now that I understand like the very core of like this is thermal engineering, to do more of like the higher level, okay, like now how does the thermal engineering come together with some of the other systems to make this vehicle work?
What would you tell a girl who wants to pursue your career but is a little scared? What would you say?
Yeah, and I think that's fair to be scared because it is a difficult career. Like I'm not gonna lie. So engineering is a very difficult but rewarding career. It has to be something that you're passionate about, but I think that's true about any degree that you go into. It has to be something that you're really motivated to do, or you won't enjoy it. Like you won't be motivated to do the coursework if it's something that you don't find interesting at all. So I would say if it's something that you really want, as hard as it can be, like there's help available. Like there's a lot of resources available. So if that's really truly what you want, like you can accomplish whatever you set your mind to, right? Like they say the sky's the limit, but I like to say like the sky's not the limit because like you have a lot of power in your mind. And if you can like see the goal, I'm like someone who likes to like visualize things, like you can accomplish it, right? You just have to put your mind to it, to be patient, to be persistent, and really just, like continue to be passionate about it. Use the resources that you have, and like go for it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Zaida. Thank you for listening to this episode. You liked what you heard? Tell me what you liked in the review section, and if you want more episodes like this, please share your suggestions. After this episode, I invite you to follow the Invernadero Mind Podcast Facebook page, where you'll be able to find show notes, resources, and other information about this episode. I can't wait to see you there.